Welcome back to this video guide for the GDS Lab software. Here I would like to show you how to export an archive file for support debugging. So essentially, if you had a situation where there were some questions over the test and you wanted to send some information to GDS, this is a feature that we've added in that assists us to understand each other about what's actually occurred. What I'm going to do is load in a test here, which actually demonstrates the reloading in of a test file if we wanted to run it again, for example. I've got a test here from a config file called Chris. Let's open up Chris's test. Now that config file contains all of the information from that test. So the test stages that were run and the graphs that were created. We can look at any of the data from that config file for that test. And from that, I could then export that data to a .gds text file. But what I want to do here, just to show you that this is a multi-stage test, if I looked at stage 1, which was monotonic loading, we can see the graphs from that. If I wanted to look at stage 2, which was also monotonic loading, we can see the graphs from that. So it truly is, we've recovered from a GTC file a complete test. Now if I come up to this settings button here and click, we see we've got an archive section. This would archive everything that occurred in that test for us. So if I click save, and I'm going to call this Carl archive, and I'm going to save it just somewhere I can find it easily now. I'll save it in my documents section, Carl archive, and it saves a zip file for me. So if I come here, I'm in my documents section. If I go to the Carl archive, which is a zip file, in Windows we can see exactly what's in that zip file. We have a log file. Let me look at that text file. This is a log file of every button that was clicked by the user when using GDS Lab, so that it helps us understand what was set up. Maybe there was something spurious that happened. We can understand exactly what the customer did. The settings is a JSON file. This is all of the settings for your system, for how the GDS Lab is set up, and for how your Windows is set up. Then we have the GTC file. This is the file which, if I just open this is the file that contains all of the test data. It contains the setup data, essentially, for the test, so that we can understand exactly what test setups you did. Here we have the GSC file, which is the station config file, which is the file which shows how we've got our station, essentially, like the old INI file, our station, what devices we've got connected. If I just pop back to GDS Lab here, essentially the config file is showing us that this is our setup, or whatever setup was used for the test. And then the final file is the Windows events file, which is a file that shows all of the interesting Windows events that might have occurred during that test, in case we're looking for a bug that might be a conflict with Windows. So essentially, create the archive file through this settings and send it to GDS if there are any doubts. I hope that was useful. Thank you.